All right, in this video, I'm going to step you through a PHP MySQL login system that you could use for a website. Creating a login system for your website is a common task, and using the combination of PHP and MySQL is a pretty popular choice. PHP is a web-based programming language, and MySQL is PHP is a server-based programming language, and MySQL is a very popular database system, if not the most popular, that you would use to store your users' credentials, such as emails and passwords. So I'm going to share with you the code, this GitHub repository that you see here, there's 6 files that make up this system. And if you're somewhat familiar with PHP and HTML, most of these files should be straightforward. For example, let's take a look. There's this login create file that includes a very simple form with text fields for a username and password. That's it. That basically does 3 things. It checks to see up here, it'll check to see if you are logged in already by looking at the PHP sessions. And if you are logged in, it's going to forward you to the main page, what we would call like the dashboard for this site, which is the index.php. If you're not logged in, we will use some methods in this. As you see here, we connect to this config.t.php page. I'll show you that in a moment. But basically, if you're not logged in and you submit this form, it's going to look at some functions that exist in here. Mainly this function right here, login user, which will take care of checking your credentials against what's stored in the database and logging you in, creating a new session, and so that the site remembers that you're logged in across multiple pages. And then the last option, this else part, is you tried to log in, but you didn't use a valid user pass combo. And so you either have to try again, or you're going to have to want to click on this link to go register an account. Pretty straightforward. However, the important thing to consider when you're making a PHP MySQL login system for your website is the security used to protect the user's credentials. And there's definitely a few points, few things I want to point out that went into this system that I think were important. And we'll take a quick look at the register page. Again, very simple form, almost identical to the one that's in the login, except you are creating an account here. And so when the page judges that you just submitted an account to create an account, we're going to go ahead and look at the register user function. And like I said, so everything that connects to the database is in this config t.php. So let's take a look at that. Actually, this one right here. And if we look at register user, there's a lot that goes into this. We hash the password. We sanitize the username. Again, like the hashing is really important. Storing a user's password securely. It allows you to store a user's password securely by using a strong hash algorithm. In this case, we're using what's called bcrypt, and I'll show you that up here, right here. So this is a built-in function for PHP, and by default is a good secure algorithm for encrypting for hashing a password. And it also, as a part of that, it's actually, you don't have to specify it. It happens automatically. There's a salting that happens, which even makes the process more secure. it basically what this does, it ensures that if the database is breached, it's compromised, it's going to be pretty difficult for that hacker to retrieve the original passwords. They're going to have this long set of strings that kind of looks like gibberish. All right, so yeah, so that's what's going on there. And then as I did mention, it is real important to prepare statements and parameterize your queries. And as you see, we do that here where we create prepared statements. We're taking in parameters. This just makes it, again, a little bit harder for someone to use an SQL injection or something like that. We do sanitize it as well, which makes sure that what that does is it protects, again, against an SQL injection, or because we take care of all the escape sequences that could be used for that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. One other thing I will show you that, again, is just another kind of security feature is we do make sure the user's logged in before they can get to this page, which is going to have access to maybe some things that are related to this user. We would only want credentialed people to be able to get in here. We do this thing where we check to make sure the remote address of the person accessing this page matches the remote access of the person who logged into this page. That kind of protects it against PHP session hijacking. And then we also make sure, this is important, you may or may not want to include this, but it is a good idea. Maybe you want to make this longer, but basically anyone who hasn't done anything on the site for about an hour, it just automatically logs them out and destroys their session. So those are important things that we put in here to try to make this form secure, this whole system secure. So just a few other things to be aware of. So as I said, then there's this, you'll notice the config T connects to, actually this should connect to, the config T right here connects to this config.php. This is probably the most important file, in that it's going to be the most important one to protect, because you're going to have a password and the username and the name of your database in here. So obviously you're going to replace that information in here. This should be in a folder that is secure. And if you look from here, I just named it safe. You can name a folder whatever you want, and make sure that is protected, htaccess or some other technology like that, because that's real important that is safe, those credentials. Otherwise, this is, I think, pretty self-explanatory to be able to put this together. Obviously, make sure you have a MySQL database that has a table named users, because that's where we're storing all the user information. Once again, I hope it's obvious, but in here you're going to have to obviously replace this with your username and passwords. Otherwise, that should be it. It should be, you should be able to use this as is. I'm going to go back to the README just so you see. This is kind of what the register.php page looks like. You hit register there, and it'll create an account. Then you can go ahead and log in. This hey thing you would remove. I think I even have that in the text removed. This was just for testing purposes. And then when you're logged in, you are forwarded to the index.php, and it welcomes you. And then here you can have all kinds of information that this user is supposed to have access to. And then a simple logout button that logout, I guess it's important to look at this. It regenerates the ID. Again, this is just more security stuff, and then destroys the session. And then it just takes you out of there. And so let me go back here, though. I will show you that this is kind of the structure of your MySQL table. You have an ID, you have a username, and a password. I made this username field unique. That's why I have this up here, just so you only have one person with a specific username that's a part of your, website. Other things I'll say that you could do to make this even more secure is you could possibly make it so there's a limit in the amount of attempts for someone to log in, so that you can take away brute force logins. I didn't implement that here, but you could do that. It's probably a good idea to implement a password reset and recovery system. That's not a part of this. Perhaps in a future video I'll add that to this. Also, ideally you might have a two-factor authentication. Now, a lot of time, I'll probably have a future video that shows you how to do that. There's a couple third parties that allow you to do that, and you should have this connected to an secure site. Should be an HTTPS site. That goes without saying, hopefully. And when you create your users on the MySQL database, you should be using minimal privileges for the login credentials that you put in here, just so that if someone does break into this, they don't have access to everything in your database, just the one table. And then again, I'm sharing this with you, but you should do your own research. Regularly update everything. If you're using a GoDaddy or something like that, just check to make sure that they regularly keep PHP and MySQL updated. It's always it's always a good idea to be reviewing the security technology you're using on your website from time to time, just to make sure it's up to date. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you implement it, if you run into any issues. This should work as is, as long as you have a MySQL database to connect to and set up with that users table. Thanks.